Hi, welcome to Switching
Hi.
Mindsets. This is Anuradha. I'm speaking to Shobha Viswanath. She's the founder and publishing director of Karadi Tales, bringing the best of children's literature to Indian and global audiences for over 27 years. Hi, Shobha. So wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Anu. Lovely to be here on Swishing Minds. What a lovely title for a podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure is all mine. And I know we were just talking about it's been such a long journey, so 27 years or maybe more, right? So I read that you started when you came back from the US and you couldn't, find certain books for your children, right? Could you talk about that a bit and how it all led to this?
Yeah, so it's actually 2026 would be Karadi completing 30 years. And Karadi is, I don't know, for those of you who are based in the north who know, whose South Indian words are limited probably to only the foods of South India. Karadi actually means a bear. It means a bear both in Tamil, in Malayalam, as well as in Kannada, you know. So, it is the bear who tells all the stories of Karadi, of which come out of the publishing
Yeah.
house, which is why the publishing house is called Karadi Tales. Uh, so we returned from the US around 1995. We were there for about 7 years. And when we returned, and my son was born in the US, and my first introduction to audiobooks happened in the US, at the public libraries where there would be books which came along with cassettes. And I would bring these home, and my son would put the cassette and sit with the book, and he would listen to the story and he would turn the pages as well. These were Disney cassettes. And the Disney stories, the way they were put together was they were drawn from the film. Like, if there was Pinocchio or Little Mermaid or Lion King, the cassette was a reduced version of the story, and it came along with a book, simplified illustrations, and there was a little cue at the end of the page so that the child would know to turn the page. So this was such a fabulous idea, and of course, Kaushik, my son, like absolutely took to it. I mean, the way he would consume these audiobooks, I think we'd had to go around searching for new ones. I also think it was one of the primary catalysts in his own reading acceleration because he was reading really, really fast and writing too soon after that. When we returned to India, by the time my daughter was born, and we were looking for similar material in India for her, and there was absolutely none that was available. And by this time, we'd had our fill of sort of the Snow Whites and the Cinderellas and and all of them, and we wanted to draw from the folklore of India itself. And although there were books, there was a Manchitra Katha, of course, which was very big then, but there were no audiobooks at all for children. So that was kind of the genesis of the audiobook being the first, what do you call, imprint of the Karadi Tales Publishing House. Uh, we thought we would have lots going on under the publishing house. We wanted it to be a music publishing house, actually, rather than a children's publishing house, because I was married into a family where they were all musicians, from my mother-in-law to my brothers-in-law to my co-sisters to my sister-in-law to my nieces. Everyone is a musician, including my husband and son. So, and they were familiar and they were involved with all genres of music, being primarily Carnatic classical musicians. So they wanted to start a, what do you call, a music publishing house under which one segment would be the children's audiobooks. But but the children's audiobooks itself, like, so quite consumed us in terms of the work that it required and the business of uh, publishing and disseminating books as opposed to music are, like, even though they are overlapping genres, they are not exactly the same. We started at a time when it was all analog recording. You would have to rehearse your lines like a radio play, go into the studio, have the spool turned on, and it would record on that. And there was no copy paste, and doesn't matter, just keep going, and then we can cut it from here and paste it here. So if there was a mistake, one had to redo again. So our first narrator to Karadi was Naseeruddin Shah. And I remember approaching him with this idea in mind, and he was just so taken in by it. There was no resistance, there was no negotiating price, just like, when do you want to do it? And we booked the studio, and he was generous enough to get his theater cast, to come and play the other characters in the story. They would have rehearsals, and then we would go into the studio, and it really was like a radio play. Nasir along with the other characters, and they would act it out like it was a radio play. And then we recorded this.
Which one was this?
And this was the Blue Jack Hall, the
Okay.
Blue Jack Hall and the Foolish Line. It was our very first two titles. And yeah, and like they say, then there was the rest is or was history. We started with Nasir. We also wanted to do the books in Hindi. And I remember going to Nasir to do the Hindi as well. And he said that I will do the Hindi only if Gulzar Saab translates it. So, so we took the stories and went to Gulzar Saab. It was easier those days, difficult, but not as difficult as it is now. We went to Gulzar Saab that day, and I remember, and then of course, he said, of course, I'll do it. So he translated the stories, and after he translated the stories, I remember him telling us, like, क्यों ना मैं ही पढ़ देता हूँ. You know? So, I mean, you don't have to go to Nasir for it. I can also,
Yeah.
I'm also pretty good at it. And of course, we took Gulzar Sak to do the stories, because it was his text. And what he did do, very Gulzar stylish, did not really translate the story verbatim. He gave it his own magic, and then the Hindi stories were thus born. From Nasir, I know we went to Sai Jafri. From Sai Jafri, we went to Girish Karnad. And in the meantime, we also did Nandita Das. We also worked with Tom Alter and Javed Jafri. These were our early narrators. We did Nasir in Tamil for the Tamil stories. And it was therefore a nice crop of these wonderful theatre actors lending their voice. What happened also as a result of it was, because uh, we were the first of its kind. We were the pioneers in India to do this format of an audiobook. It definitely captured everybody's imagination. I remember, I mean, it's unthinkable now to do it with the picture book. When we decide, when a book is complete, what should the print run be? We take several things into consideration, the market, the content, the hardback, the pricing, all of that. We did not come into publishing with a publishing background. None of us did. I mean, I came from education. The others were engineers or doctors or musicians. And so we said, well, in a population like India, I mean, let's just do 25,000 copies. You know?
Which is
Today,
a lot,
it's
which is a lot for
today
children's
it's
books.
unthinkable. Today we do 2,500 copies, and then we
Yeah.
keep it with us. I mean, if it sells across a year, we consider it as a successful book,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
There we did 25,000 copies. It was a book and a cassette, and both of them were enclosed in a package which would hang in a stand in a bookstore. And this was how it was done. And the 25,000 copies in 6 months got sold out. We had to go into a reprint with it, because it was one of its kind. It was something that the market had not seen before, continues to not see, because I don't
Yeah,
think anybody has
absolutely. I
the,
was going to say that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why about it a little later. So then it was like such a huge affirmation and validation, and the fact that children wrote into us loving it. So from we did a whole series of books we did with Girish Kannad also 8 books. And that's how it was born. And then we went into a crop of younger actors, less theatre, more Bollywood, like Vidya Balan or Sanjay Dutt. We even had Rahul Dravid narrate stories for us. So we worked with the younger crop of actors, because now they're old, with about seven actors, across a series of 14 books, no, seven books across seven actors. Yeah. So that was also, but what happened during this time when the cassette and the book was catching fire? Technology also not just kept pace with us, just flew right ahead of us. And the cassette players were, of course, obsolete. So people had started asking for CDs, compact drives. So we moved from the cassette to the CD. But CD, also the life of the CD was kind of short-lived, because from the CD, people moved to, getting it on a USB stick, or, having it. And from the USB stick, it moved to, of course, somewhere that they call the cloud, but which is
Yeah.
very grounded someplace, or it's streaming somewhere. I don't know. So while technology was getting ahead of us, it was not possible for us to keep pace with that in terms of change our formats. And because our creation itself took time, we didn't do more than two or three books, audio creations in a year, because it took so much time to get the actors together, to record, to book the studio, then to edit, then to put a background score to it, then to add songs to it, because it was like a full, like a Bollywood production, which is also the reason why it was so endearing to the children, because right in the middle of a story, there would be a situational song that the character breaks into. I mean, keeping in mind what kind of works for us. So while we were struggling with the formatting of how to present the audio to our consumers, we thought, we couldn't shut down the publishing house clearly, but we thought, let's move into picture books while we get that sorted. That's how the picture book genre itself was born under Karadi Tales publishing house. Otherwise, I think we may have just stayed with the audio. If there was a format that was accessible, secure, safe, and easily consumable by the child, we would have stayed just with the audiobook, because they were doing very well. People were looking forward to it. We were known by that. Even now, when I go to the New Delhi World Book Fair and we put up a stand, and it's got all our audiobooks and our picture books, we have grown up children walking up to us saying that, oh, I grew up on Karadi Tales. Oh, is that Nasir's story? So it's that which has built the brand rather than the picture books.
Yeah, it's very
That's in a
interesting.
nutshell.
That's a nutshell, yeah. It's very interesting because, yeah, even I've always associated Karadi Tales with audiobooks.
Right,
But now
right,
when you tell it, it's a very unique idea that, you want to do music and publishing.
right,
And nobody would ever
right.
associate the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music publishing is kind of, even to cut CDs and all, is the term is publishing only. So we wanted to put together, you remember it was those days when all these Alisha Chinay or Shankar Mahadevan were all coming out with music
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
videos
Indie
on
pop, we called it,
indie
yeah.
pop kind of a thing. So we didn't want to create indie pop, but we definitely wanted to curate some kinds of wonderful music programs, facilitate it, and then publish those records. When I mean publishing, that's what I meant, not in terms of a book, but
Oh,
it
okay,
was
okay.
music
Hmm.
publishing that
Yeah, but
way,
some of the songs are very popular, you said, no? Wherever you go.
Yes.
I can't
Yeah,
recall
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Correct, correct.
From
Yeah.
Three
So
Brothers and a Violin. That's the band.
violin, yeah.
Yeah.
So because there were three brothers, and one of the
Yeah.
brothers played the violin, and the violin's used in so many of our stories by my brother-in-law. So it came to be known as Three Brothers in a Violin, or that was the name they gave themselves,
Yeah.
for all the music that was created in Karadi. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you
Of
remind me,
course.
like,
Mhm.
if you can, some of the stories or the songs that became very popular? Is this?
So at that time, from the stories, there was the Monkey King, which was done by Sai Jafri. There was this song, "Monkeys, we are the monkeys. We like to swing, we like to sing, we like to jump around. I mean, I don't remember the lyrics now. It's been a while. And then
Yeah,
there was, but what we did was also very interestingly in 2000, I think, we I wrote 10 rhymes, English rhymes, which was so removed from Jack and Jill and Humpty Dumpty, because I really, really felt that it was time that we sort of displaced those. And we're changing everything, names of cities and streets, but we are still singing. Even in tribal schools, Humpty Dumpty fell on a wall with no understanding of its meaning or relevance. And I've spoken about this before, but I'll tell you again. I remember I was at a school just before it closed for the summer holidays, and I was waiting for the principal, and I heard the children singing it was a nursery school, in one of the classrooms, rain, rain, go away, come again another day, little Johnny wants to play. And for me, it was really sacrilegious, because here we are all thirsting for the monsoons to relieve us from the summer heat. And children across the nation, if they are singing Rain, Rain, Go Away, it was like something that ought not to be done. We should celebrate. In London, it rains all the time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
little Johnny wants to play, and therefore he's asking the rain to go away. What are we doing, asking the rain to go away? It's our life and substance and subsistence. Yeah, we are an agricultural country. We can't be asking the rains to go away. So I think the idea or the germination of the idea for writing a new set of nursery rhymes in English. See, in the languages, we don't have a problem at all. In Marathi, they will sing Yere Yere Pausa. Pausa is rain, Tula de to paisa. And even in whether it is in Telugu or Malayalam, we have songs which celebrate what's around you. It's only in English because we were handed down the rhymes from the colonial, from the British.
yeah.
We continued to sing them, and they were the ones who put together the education system. So this was a part of that. So I came back. I remember I wrote 10 rhymes, and the three brothers in a violin set it to really fabulous tunes, all set on Indian ragas, all the tunes. See, the other thing with the English nursery rhymes were that they were all of the same tune. A Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars tune was across so many other things. A, B, C, D, Twinkle, Twinkle. Everything is the same tune. There are no varieties in tunes or I don't know what in meter or rhythm that the children sing to. Anyway, the three brothers in a violin just gave 10 tunes for these 10 songs, and then we went to Usha to sing these songs. So from those came about our first set of 10 rhymes, which we called as Karadi rhymes, which is now, of course, we created these in 2020, but those are just across all over India now, pretty much. I mean, not enough, but wherever we go, whichever school we visit, there are people singing chai, chai, coffee, coffee, things like that, where we
Yeah.
celebrate trains, where when you're waiting in the train station, this is what you hear chai, chai, and coffee, coffee.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Chai, chai,
So,
and there's a particular intonation, the way they say it.
intonation too, exactly, exactly. So we created 10 rhymes first, and then we created another 10, and then another 10. So we've got 30 rhymes, which comprise Karadi rhymes today, which are completely contextual to children in India. It talks about festivals, talks about saris and the rivers of India, the trees of India, whatever. It's completely contextual to India. And so when you sing these songs, it's more related to our childhood than a child who's growing up in London or the UK. Yeah. But these became extremely popular. If you ask me which is your one title that has done really well for you, it would be the Karadi Rhymes, uh, because they started even, I know that they've gifted it even when mothers are pregnant, when the children start listening to it. I remember when we recorded a story with Rahul Dravid, It was called Crickematics. It was again an audiobook.
Yeah.
And his children were really little at that time. And I remember when we went to see him, we gifted him the Karadi Rhymes. It was only the first volume then that had come out, I think. And then the next time we went to do the second story, he told us, Shobha, I don't know what you've done in giving this. I'm so sick of these songs because we get into the car and that's all the children want to play again and again and again, really thinking of hiding away these cassettes. You had a little cassette deck also in the car at the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and
And then
children
there was,
love it, that repeat value.
yeah,
I had
yeah,
got these books for my nephew, Gulzar, you were speaking about.
right,
Uh,
right.
those
Mm,
audiobooks, and with the book, you have the picture book as well, and you have the audio book.
exactly,
He used to listen to it
exactly,
all the time. And I remember when someone
right,
came home, he would make them listen to it.
right. Yeah,
So
so this was
wonderful.
also for us very, very important in the manner in which we gave the audiobook. That while it moved from the cassette to the CD, we still could give the cassette and the CD and the cassette and the cassette and the book and the CD and the book together as a package. When it moved to USB, the pricing did not work out for us at all. And when you put it somewhere else, that is on a cloud or a stream or something and ask them to access it, then people just want the audio and they don't want the books. But our main idea behind the audiobook was also to empower the child as a reader. You know, going by my own example or my son's example, I really believe that listening and looking at the words and looking at the pictures really was a catalyst for his
Yeah, and I
accelerated
was
reading.
reading that you're also a special educator when you were in the US, and the
Yes,
audiobook helped
yes.
there, right? Yeah. Mm.
Actually, the audiobook idea came from there because I specialized in teaching the visually impaired, and so a lot of the knowledge that they consumed or that was given to them was through audio. This was whether it was textbook work or whether it was just stories that were told. So we would sit and create a lot of audios for these children, and the manner in which they enjoyed it. And I would always think if only these audios were a little bit more embellished or enriched, the listening experience would become so fantastic for them. So the whole idea of the audiobook to start Karadi Tales with an audiobook also stemmed from my having my experience, not just of working with my son, but also with visually impaired children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, we say that children don't read enough these days, right? But I think this whole multimedia experience, and a lot of parents have heard, authors also say that, parents will buy children burgers or things like that, but they won't buy them books. But they don't
Books,
realize
right?
what you said, that repeat value of a book. A child goes back to the
Exactly.
book like
Yeah,
100 times,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So my grandnephew now, my niece's son, he's all of 5 years old now, and we gave him the some of the audiobooks when he was about 2 or 3, and you should see he's not reading. He was not reading then, but you cannot even when the audio is not playing and it's bedtime, and he asks me to read from the same book. And sometimes when I change a sentence around, he'll say, It's not like that. You're telling it wrong, you know, because even if they don't read, they know. And then, even if you've not turned the page, he knows that you have to turn the page, even if he's not reading, because he knows where the next set of words come.
yeah, yeah.
So just by, and then of course, it's completely with repeated listenings, just like with anything, just like we learn anything, things get memorized. So he sits in front of a book and you think he's reading so fast. He's listened to it multiple times. What happens, the byproduct of it is you can point to a letter, a word, and he'll be able to tell it not because he can read it. I mean, he does read it because of sight vocabulary, because you're seeing that word repeatedly and you're hearing what it sounds like. Don't really need to resort to phonics or anything. The richness of the sight vocabulary that happens as a result of this is immense. Although I don't want to actually reduce this whole thing to a reading pedagogy. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That Well, whether you reduce it or you uplift it to a reading pedagogy depends on whose ever point of view. The primary, what do you call, pull or the bait is that it's fun. Everything,
Absolutely, it's fun, the joy of it. Yeah.
everything else is incidental. You don't set out creating the pedagogy. You set out by giving a child something that he completely enjoys, and from that, other things arise. So we did start uh, another company, which is our same company, but another vertical, which is into education called Karadi Path Education Company. And over the years, when we were 10 years into Karadi Tales, we discovered that a lot of schools were taking our audio and using it in their language labs, you know and they were used to the extent that they knew how to. So we decided, why don't we create a really robust English language program with these audiobooks where the telling of the story is in very good diction, okay, in very good language. We don't have people who are telling the story who have got thick accents. It's a neutral accent. It's neither British nor American. It's an Indian accent, but it's a neutral accent. And there are songs which again can hook the children into getting into the story. So we created a language learning pedagogy called the Karadi Path method of language learning, which um, which takes on the approach of how you would learn a mother tongue. You know, nobody taught us that this is a subject or a predicate or a verb or this is a clause and this is how each letter sounds, like the phonics approach to it. Nobody say is the
Yeah.
child learn to say amma or appa or whatever it is. So we continue to call it the mother tongue approach to language learning. And we use the story in it, we use the music in it, we use actions in it, we use listening in it as a major component for language learning. So what started as a completely joyful and is continues to be joyful even in a classroom where it's not looked at as a textbook where you have to pare it down, learn meanings of words, and everything is understood in context. My husband heads that, Vishnath. And when you speak to Vish, he will always tell you that it is so much easier for a child growing up in Chennai, surrounded by Tamil, and asked to learn Hindi, to be just sent to live in Delhi for a year. You know, what you can't accomplish in a year in your classroom will not just be accomplished in a year in Delhi, but much more than that because the environment supports it, because the ecosystem supports it. So, therefore, he will always tell that no second language was ever learnt in a classroom.
That's
you know,
true. That's
like,
true because
yeah,
I was taught, when my father had a, transferable job, and I remember we were posted in Bangalore. I lived in Bangalore for 10 years as a child, posted in Nashik for a few months, and I couldn't learn either language. So
yeah,
it's very
yeah,
difficult in a classroom setting,
yeah. It's very difficult in a classroom setting.
Some people
Although,
take to it
I
very,
mean,
I mean, I learned some poems because, and
yeah,
also because, where we were living, there was not much of local language. We spoke Hindi or English.
right,
And
right,
recently I tried learning Spanish. And
right.
it's still a process, but, that whole translation thing, you're trying to translate everything in your
Ah,
head, which
correct,
is a
correct.
problem.
Correct. Which
Hmm.
is why that we don't encourage in our classrooms any instructions to be translated into Tamil also, if or whichever language that the school is in or which state it is in. That this is how we are when we go abroad, right? Like you stay there for some time and then you make the connections, you hear the words, you learn the numbers first, you learn small words, please, thank you, and all of that. And then you learn one, two, three, and then you learn to string a couple of words together. And and before you know it, you're speaking, if not
Yeah, yeah.
fluently,
You're
at
just
least enough
immersed
to
in it. Yeah,
communicate. You're immersed in it.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, which is why I always tell we discovered immersive long before it became the trending word.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Also,
yeah.
I want to talk to you about vernacular because, your books are translated, even your audio, in several languages. S-
Not really. We started
mm,
initially with Tamil and Hindi, but
okay.
we didn't stay with that because as it is, English audio was posing a challenge in terms of, its format.
Yeah.
With Tamil, it became more difficult because the markets are smaller, and to make an audiobook is really expensive. You know, so even the English books, you know how the pricing are. If you are looking at Hindi books and if you're looking at English books, for God knows what, the price is always higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
One is not
That's
saying
true.
that the Hindi market is not an affordable market. Of course, it is an affordable market. I don't know why they price it lower. But this is the general mindset in the publishing world itself that all regional languages books are priced at much lower than English has given some sort of artificial hierarchy in this, that it is something to be aspired for,
Yeah.
something to reach. Like
Yeah. Yeah. And all
there's
parents
everything
want
here.
their children to pick up the language, right? So it's that
Pick up the
aspirational
language.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
Mm.
but that doesn't really. I mean, we did a few books in Tamil and we did it in Hindi as well, but that's not our mainstay. We continue to publish in English. It's only the stories of rural India, which we ourselves haven't translated into other languages. But publishers from other languages have approached us asking if they could license our content and translate it into their own languages for their own market to service their own market. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And your stories are very Indian, so that makes sense.
Correct,
Right? Yeah.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
Mm.
about folk tales and, rural India? You've been, like you said, your project,
Yeah,
drawing stories from rural India. So,
correct. So this started as a collaboration between us and People's Archive of Rural India, Sainath. Sainath is from Chennai originally,
yeah,
or
you're a very
he was,
well-known journalist. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Magsaysay Award winner and rural journalist,
Right.
agricultural
Right.
journalist.
Yeah.
And I have gone to listen to him speak in a couple of places, and really, really good speaker. And I don't know, we just became friends. And I remember when he launched this archive, People's Archive of Rural India, which is an online archive portal. He walked me through it, and we've been in touch ever since. And I remember once when he sent me a link asking me to read a story, and I went into the portal and I got distracted with other stories. And the more I read, the more I was fascinated by the kinds of happenings that take place in rural India. Everything from language to art and craft and music, and even their livelihoods and occupations. This was something me as an adult had not known of, Where are our urban children ever going to be introduced to such things like that unless they proactively take interest in it? Otherwise, it's only going to be fantasy or wimpy kids, Percy Jackson kind of books that are going to capture their imagination. So I spoke to Sainath and I said we would like to turn these into chapter books for children. The reports themselves are very small, maybe just 150, 200 words, a small report of somewhere in rural India. So, but I could see the possibility of it being converted to a maybe 8, 10,000 word book. So Sainath said, you can speak to the journalists themselves. And that's how this whole series of books happened, We have 10 books now in the series. They're all chapter books which are written by the journalist who covered the original stories in whether it was in People's Archive of Rural India or whether it was for the Hindu or it was for the Indian Express or whatever. We approached them. We approached them for two reasons. One is that they would uh, know the story really well. And if permissions had to be sought, if you are basing your story on a real life, then we definitely have to take a no objection certificate from them, or saying that they were all right. And they would be the best people to do it because even they would be familiar with the journalists. And as far as writing is concerned, we didn't have to worry about it. That they would write it, we probably would just have to guide them a little bit through this process of fictionalizing something, parts of it. So the books have been an absolutely enormous success in many ways. One is it's such a huge eye opener, for us to get an insight into rural India, of the things that happen there, of the people who lead their lives, of the hardship they endure, of their true successes. Here we've got urban children crying because they didn't get the latest, I don't know, Xbox or whatever to play with. And here children are there dealing with real life, life and death situations, and trying to overcome that, and still finding so much joy in their everyday existence, uncomplaining, persevering, resilient. These were incredible. And I thought this was something that the middle school or children need to read. I mean, I'm not denying them their Percy Jackson, but please, along with that, also read this. So that's how these 10 stories were born, all on different topics, different subjects: migration, children with HIV/AIDS, um, farming, climate, climate crisis, communities unheard of, like about the coolie community in Bombay, the fisherman community, or a community in Maharashtra that actually begs for a living. There were so many, many different kinds of stories that, and continue to be, So this series, I see it as an infinite list of books, but right now we've published 10, and schools have now started using them as supplementary readers rather than, pick a book like I don't know, Tale of Two Cities. We are learning the Tale of Two Villages in India and using that as an interdisciplinary study, not just as an English supplementary reader, but to see what can we learn on geography or on environmental science or about climate change or livelihood or farming or soil. So geography, history, environmental science, everything is sort of intertwined with these stories. And they are beautiful, if I may say so myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you, one would consider these are depressing themes for children or too serious. So I know that there are a lot of publishers, including Richa Jha, Pickle Yoke Books. So they talk about serious themes for children, and I
Yeah.
think so children, do you believe that, they can be exposed to it? We just try to shield them too much. Or do you dress it up in a way that, it sounds easier for them to digest? Or how does it, what do you think?
Not really. With the Pari books, with this story series, rather, they are all grim realities. Okay, a child caught in a flood in Wayanad, or something that is really, what do you call, uh, that real hardship that the child endures or undergoes. However, what we've done with the story series is, while the reports themselves would probably have been left open ended, we try to end it with a note of hope. That from here on, one is not saying that from here on everything is going to be hunky dory, but perhaps there is still a light at the end of the tunnel if people work together, or one, takes up this cause, or there are people who are worth the fight, kind of a thing. Yeah.
So, Shobha, I also wanted to ask you, you said that you're working with a lot of schools and organizations, etc. So how does this, the work that you're doing enter the mainstream, whether it's early childhood learning or, even these rural stories? How do, how,
Yeah.
how
How
can
do they enter the
reach more
mainstream?
people? Yeah.
Uh, so, see, the best way, what's happened to the retail business itself in India, or anywhere for that matter, in terms of bookstores. Bookstores are closing down, and bookstores are less of bookstores and more of so many other things. Of course, there are still a lot of bookstores still there, but the numbers of retail stores that used to exist when we started Karadi Tales is like to 1/10 of it now, I think, across the country. So, and with the retail stores, of course, your book has to be discovered in the light of so many other books. So, to to reach people, the retail store is not the way. I mean, you can be there for visibility for your brand and for people who come there to pick it up. But best is to be on online platforms across, and of course, through schools, through schools is the best thing, because finally, anyway, they are your customers and consumers. You want the children to read. So whether the school takes your books as part of their library sets, or the school takes your books as supplementary readers to read the book and discuss, that's the way to get it into mainstream. But the very interesting thing about the books that Karadi Path uses, for as a part of their the methodology, is that these books that we would think is only for the urban affordable income family is now also available to all these children through the program. Because Karadi Path not only works with the CBSE and the state board schools, they also work with a lot of government schools, tribal welfare schools, schools that are supported by CSR programs, you know. So a child who's probably in the, I don't know, remotest village in Odisha probably gets to see a really lovely book, which you would see in Bologna on a bookshelf, or probably even in one of the metros in a fancy bookstore. You get to see in the hands of a child. I think that is what makes it for us extremely satisfying and fulfilling. That you are not really involved in only a self-indulgent uh, exercise of creating beautiful books for your own love of art and story and consumption, but you are actually sending this out to this public at large to say, you also take out whatever it is that you can take out from this book. We are not telling you what is there to take out, but look at it and see whether how you like it, how you enjoy it. Look at the art, look at the pictures, listen to the story.
Yeah, wonderful, Shobha. Thanks so much. Any message for parents, educators, anybody, like,
Yeah.
when it comes to books, really?
I would only say to keep aside, if you can, all these policies and things that dictate your choice of books, you know? Because what will happen then is all publishers, because everybody wants to be successful, will start creating books that will adhere to some policy which has been put in place by somebody or an existing government, which could change later. And just look at books for what they are and your own personal response to it, and introduce them to your children. Don't come with preconceived notions about anything, about the way an apple has to look even in a book, or even how a story has to start somewhere and end somewhere, how only certain kinds of characters need to be in the story. Of course, one has to keep in mind about the age of the child whom you're introducing the book to. You would not want to introduce the child to bad language, obscene language, or maybe even violence when the child is very young, because the child is not in a position to handle it at all. But even in that age group, there are so many other stereotypes that can be broken, that you don't have to. Can we look at it in another way? Can we see a story in another way, from another point of view, to question it, and always to draw attention to the art that so many illustrators take painstakingly to do, and the publishers take time to publish, that don't just flip through it hurriedly. Maybe there's something there that your child can discover. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. The illustrations are sure art.
art really. And with regards to the story series, it's really, I mean, I so compel and urge the teachers of all strata of schools, whether you're a government school or whether you are a IB school, these books are so needed for the children. It is needed for the rural child because he or she needs to see herself represented in a book. It is also needed for the rural child because all rural India is not the same. A child in rural India, rural Tamil Nadu, is not the same as a child in rural Bihar. Even the rural demographics change, the environment change, the ecosystems change. So it is for the rural child. It is for the urban child for the most obvious reasons. Let us be sensitive to the life of another child who lives a life so completely different from from yours, and celebrate that difference and diversity and empathize. Most importantly, empathize, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next, Shobha, for Karadi? There's so much
So
you're doing already. Yeah.
yeah, so interestingly, I don't know, it's probably early to say it, but we are relaunching our audiobooks because what we have now found a way that should technology even develop even further, that we would have a way to give our audience or give our customers a way to consume the audio. So we are having the books being sold with a QR code at the back of the book, where if you scan the QR code, it will take you to a place where you can listen to the audio.
Oh, that's great. So the book
Yeah.
is part of the package.
The book is part of it is the book that you will see to buy.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
buy the
absolutely.
book and then you have to buy the book to access the QR code
Yeah.
in order to get there.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
also, we were, before we end, you were going to talk about why not every publisher can do this, audiobooks. Yeah,
Yeah, and not every publisher can. See, we got lucky because we were all musicians. Okay, so but if you have to create a story today and give it that kind of audio that the Karadi Tales audio has, it would cost you a couple of lakhs in the least,
yeah.
because you have to hire a studio, you have to get people like Nasir or whoever to come tell the stories, and then you have to create songs. We've got Shankar Mahadevan and all sing the songs for us. So we've got somebody to come sing the song, set the tune, write the lyrics. There are so many components to the audio itself, far more than the book. The book has an author and an illustrator, while the audio has so many musicians are involved with it. A music director is there, a composer is there, an arranger is there, plus all these other instrumentalists and all of that. And we were doing everything acoustic. So, which is probably the reason nobody else could do the same thing. And because the family were musicians, the music was also unique in its genre. It was not like the dumbed down versions of tunes that you use for children. That was simple and moronic. But yeah, so it's really difficult. So even today, if I was to take a story that I want to turn into an audiobook, the next title in the audiobook series, and I approach a musician for it, the cost is so completely unviable unless I can draw from the skill and the talent from my own family, because
Yeah.
clearly we are not paying the market value. Yeah,
Obviously, yeah. No,
yeah,
that's true, because it's an entire production, as you said. Yeah.
yeah. It's an
Yeah.
entire production. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been an interesting journey, lots of ups and downs and plateaus. And but would we have done anything else? No, I think we would still be doing this. We wouldn't have made a whole lot of money in our entire career, but that was never the goal. That was never the goal. Yeah, because we all have possess enough skill and talent to take up a job in an MNC, which would pay you 4, 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs a month, you know, and climb that corporate ladder. But that was never our intent.
Yeah. What was the
Money
goal,
was
if I
not,
may ask?
sorry.
What was the goal?
The goal was to make reading a completely pleasurable thing for the child, to get to reading and use Karadi as a storyteller to draw the child into the world of books and stories.
Fantastic. And I think you're still on that journey. It's so nice.
Yeah.